Welcome to You Certify CompTIA Cloud Plus CV0-004 Must Know Glossary Terms Part 1. Term: Address Resolution Protocol, ARP. Definition: a protocol that determines the mapping of an IP address to the physical MAC address on a local network. Advanced Encryption Standard, AES. A symmetrical block cipher. AES has been approved and adopted by many governments, including the United States and Canada, to encrypt sensitive data. AES has also been adopted as a standard by the National Institute of Standards and Technology. Term: anomaly. Definition: a metric that is either above or below your expectations. Term: application lifecycle. Definition: the management of a software application from the initial planning stages to its retirement. Term: application programming interface, API. Definition: the means to access, control, and configure a device programmatically between different and discrete software components. Term: asynchronous replication. Definition: writes the data to the primary storage location and then later sends copies to the remote replicas. With asynchronous replication, there will be a delay as the data is copied to the backup site and becomes consistent because it uses a store and forward design. Term: authentication. Definition: the process of determining the identity of a client, usually by a login process. Term: automation. Definition: software systems operating in a cloud provider's data center that automate the deployment and monitoring of cloud offerings. Term: autoscaling. Definition: a cloud feature that automatically adds and removes resources based on demand. Term: availability zones. Definition: isolated locations within data center regions that public cloud services originate and operate. Term: backup target. Definition: the endpoint or storage system where the backup data is to be stored. Term: backup window. Definition: the time available for the backup operation to run while the target storage system is either offline or lightly used. Term: business continuity plan. Definition: a plan that recognizes that there are inherent threats and risks that can have a detrimental effect on a company, and that defines how to protect the company assets and be able to survive a disaster. This gives an organization the ability to continue operations and to deliver products and services after an event that disrupts its operations. Term: call tree. Definition: a hierarchy of who is responsible for informing who of high-impact incidents. Term: capacity. Definition: the end-to-end metric for maximum available network bandwidth and utilized capacity, or rate, from source to destination. It can also be the maximum amount that something can contain, or, in the case of cloud resources, the maximum supported capacity of any object or service. Term: change advisory board. Definition: supports the change management team by reviewing, sequencing, and approving changes that have been requested, by determining the priorities, and by planning for all upcoming changes. Term: change approval. Definition: the process dedicated to approving or denying all change requests submitted by an organization's IT operations. Term: change management. Definition: the process of managing all aspects of ongoing upgrades, repairs, and reconfigurations. Term: cipher. Definition: any method of encrypting data by concealing its readability and meaning. Term: cloud bursting. Definition: an elasticity model where a primary data center carries the current compute load, and when additional capacity is required, a remote cloud can assist with the load. Term: cloud computing. Definition: outsourcing of data center operations, applications, or any part of operations for a provider of computing resources. Term: cloud object storage. Definition: storage data, such as a common file, that is paired with metadata and combined into a storage object. Term: cloud segmentation. Definition: the process of dividing the cloud deployment into small sections to allow for granular security policies to be applied. Term: cloud service provider. Definition: a company that hosts computing systems and sells computing to consumers. Term: clusters. Definition: groups of computers interconnected by a local area network and tightly coupled together. Term: cold site. Definition: when the backup data center is provisioned to take over operations in the event of a primary data center failure, but the servers and infrastructure are not deployed or operational until needed. Term: co-location. Definition: a shared data center operation offered by a service provider. Term: configuration management. Definition: uses a central repository for storing, archiving, and tracking resource configurations. Term: console port. Definition: serial port for CLI access. Term: CPU affinity. Definition: the ability to assign a processing thread to a core instead of having the hypervisor dynamically allocate it. Term: CPU wait time. Definition: the time that a process or thread has to wait to access a CPU for processing. Term: data archiving. Definition: the movement of inactive data, infrequently accessed data, or data that is no longer being used to a separate storage facility for long-term storage. Term: data center. Definition: a facility housing computing systems. Term: data classification. Definition: organizing data into different tiers or categories for the purpose of making data available as required and to meet regulatory requirements, mitigate risk, manage risk, and secure data. Term: Department of Defense Information Assurance Certification and Accreditation Process, DIACAP. Definition: the process for computer systems IT security. DIACAP compliance is required to be certified to meet the U.S. Department of Defense security requirements for contractors. Term: development environments. Definition: environments used in the creation and testing of new cloud-based services and primarily used by software programmers and DevOps groups. Term: DIG. Definition: a Linux command line utility used to resolve host names to IP addresses using a DNS name server. Term: digital signature algorithm, DSA, an asymmetrical encryption that uses a private key and a public key. PKI is the framework that uses protocols such as DSA for encryption. With PKI and DSA, the common implementation is an asymmetrical protocol using a public and private key pair, such as DSA, to set up an encrypted connection to exchange symmetrical keys. Then the symmetrical keys are used to perform bulk encryption and decryption, since they are faster and require less processing. Term: discretionary access control, DAC. Definition: gives users the ability to grant or assign rights to objects and make access decisions. Term: durable storage. Definition: storage volumes that retain data if the virtual machine is removed or deleted. Term: elasticity. Definition: the ability to automatically and dynamically add resources such as storage, CPUs, memory, servers, and network capacity. Term: ephemeral storage. Definition: storage volumes that do not retain data if the virtual machine is removed or deleted. Term: event correlation. Definition: a method or process that makes sense out of a large number of reported events from different sources and identifies the relationships between the events. Term: extended metadata. Definition: an extended list of data that can be attached to a data file for detailed index schemas. Term: extending the scope. Definition: adding new features and capacity to your cloud deployment. Term: extensible markup language, XML. Definition: a standard that is a flexible way to describe data, create information formats, and electronically share structured data between computing systems. Term: fault tolerance. Definition: a system that will remain operational even after there has been a degradation of its systems. Term: Federal Information Security Management Act, FISMA. Definition: a U.S. federal law that outlines the framework to protect federal government information, operations, and facilities. Term: Federal Risk and Authorization Management Program, FedRAMP. Definition: a U.S. federal government-wide program that outlines the standards for a security assessment, authorization, and continuous monitoring for cloud products and services. Term: Federations. Definition: multiple organizations sharing the same application. The federated identity management approach allows all participants to consolidate resources. Users share a common set of policies and access rights across multiple organizations. Term: File backups. Definition: backups of storage folders and files that you selected with your backup software to another storage location for later access. Term: FIPS 140-2. Definition: National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, publication that coordinates the requirements and standards for cryptography modules. Term: Generic Routing Encapsulation, GRE. Definition: a standardized network tunneling protocol that is used to encapsulate any network layer protocol inside a virtual link between two locations. GRE is commonly used to create tunnels across a public network that carries private network traffic. Term: Graphical User Interface, GUI. Definition: a graphical representation commonly used to create, configure, manage, and monitor cloud resources and services. Term: Harden. Definition: the process of disabling all unused services, ports, and applications on a server to make it as secure as possible. Term: Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA. Definition: the standard for protecting medical patient data. Companies that work with protected health information must ensure that all of the required physical, network, and process security measures are in place and followed to meet HIPAA compliance requirements. Term: High availability. Definition: the ability of a resource to remain available after a failure of a system. Term: Horizontal scaling. Definition: a scaling that involves extra compute capacity and doesn't require downtime. Term: Horizontal server scalability. Definition: an ability to add additional servers to expand workload processing capability. Term: Hot site. Definition: two fully redundant cloud data centers in sync with each other, with the standby site backing up the primary in real time in the event of a failure. Term: Hotfix. Definition: a software update type that is intended to fix an immediate and specific problem with a quick release procedure. Term: Hypervisor affinity. Definition: rules to ensure that particular VMs never run on the same VM host hardware. These are necessary to ensure resiliency if a VM host fails. Term: ifconfig. Definition: a Linux command line utility used to verify and configure the local network interfaces. Term: image backups. Definition: copies of complete hard drive volumes. They are also often called disaster backup, cloning, ghosting, image backups, or block-level backups. Term: instance initialization time. Definition: the time required to start a new compute instance. Term: International Organization for Standardization, ISO, 27001. Definition: a quality standard that ensures a cloud provider meets all regulatory and statutory requirements for its product and service offerings. Term: International Traffic in Arms Regulations, ITAR. Definition: restricts information from being disseminated to certain foreign entities that could assist in the import or export of arms. ITAR is a list of data security requirements that cloud companies can certify as being compliant with to meet this U.S. requirement. Term: Intrusion Detection System, IDS. Definition: a system that detects suspicious activity on the network in real time by passively monitoring traffic looking for signatures of network activity that indicate an intrusion based on predefined rule sets and that generates alerts. Term: Intrusion Prevention System, IPS. Definition: a system that detects suspicious activity on the network in real time by passively monitoring traffic looking for signatures of network activity that indicate an intrusion based on predefined rule sets, and that actively shuts down the intrusion. Term: IP security, IPsec. Definition: a framework or architecture that uses many different protocols to provide integrity, confidentiality of data, and authentication of data on a TCP/IP network. Term: IP config. Definition: a Windows command line utility used to verify and configure the local network interfaces. Term: JavaScript Object Notation, JSON. Definition: a lightweight data interchange format standard that is easily readable and easy for computing systems to parse and generate. Term: jitter. Definition: the variable delay between packets from source to destination. Term: jumbo frame. Definition: Ethernet frame larger than the standard 1518 bytes. Term: latency. Definition: the time for a packet to travel from source to destination. Term: Layer 2 Tunneling Protocol, L2TP. Definition: a remote access communications protocol that is a common method for connecting to a remote device over the Internet. Term: load balancing. Definition: distributing traffic to redundant servers to achieve high availability and scalability. Load balancing functions may include SSL/TLS termination, compression, and session tracking. Term: local backup. Definition: created when data in a data center is stored on its primary storage array and a backup operation is performed. Term: logging. Definition: the detailed transaction records generated by all elements in the cloud for the transactions and interactions of a device or system. Term: maintenance window. Definition: a scheduled time that maintenance can be performed and outages are planned for the ongoing support of operations. Term: managed security as a service, MASAS. Definition: companies that specialize in cloud-based managed security services. Term: mandatory access control, or MAC. Definition: highly controlled systems where the access is defined by strict levels of access that are common in secure environments such as defense or financial systems. Maximum Transmission Unit, EMTU. The standard largest Ethernet frame size that can be transmitted into the network, 1,518 bytes. Term: mean time between failure, MTBF. Definition: the life expectancy of a hardware component. In other words, how long it is expected to operate before a failure. Term: mean time system recovery. Definition: the time for a resilient system to complete recovery from a service failure. Term: mean time to repair, MTTR. Definition: the time required to repair a damaged hardware component. Term: mean time to switchover, MTSO. Definition: the time required from when a service failure occurs to when the backup system resumes operations. Term: memory ballooning. Definition: a hypervisor function that allows the hypervisor to reclaim unused memory from a VM running on top of the hypervisor and allocates that memory for other uses. Term: metadata. Definition: part of a file or sector header in a storage system that is used to identify the content of the data. Term: metric. Definition: a standard of measurement that defines the conditions and the rules for performing the measurement and for understanding the results of a measurement. Term: Motion Picture Society of America, MPAA. Definition: publishes best practices for storing, processing, and delivering protected media and content securely over the Internet. Term: multi-factor authentication. Definition: an access control technique that requires several pieces of information to be granted access. Multi-factor implementations usually require you to present something you know, such as a username-password combination, and something you have, such as a smart card, fingerprint, or a constantly changing token number off an ID card. Term: National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST. Definition: a U.S. federal organization that defines cloud computing standards and models. Term: NetStat. Definition: network statistics utility found in Windows and Linux, used to see which network connections are open to remote applications. Term: network capacity. Definition: the available network capacity, usually measured by bandwidth. Term: network latency. Definition: the delay or time it takes for data to traverse a network, the time measurement of a network packet to travel from source to destination. Term: network time protocol, NTP. Definition: a protocol that allows all devices to synchronize to a central clock or time service. Term: non-durable storage. Definition: storage volumes that do not retain data if the virtual machine is removed or deleted. Term: NSLOOKUP. Definition: Windows-based command line utility used to resolve host names to IP addresses using a DNS server. Term: obfuscation. Definition: a means to complicate, confuse, or bewilder. Obfuscating is used to hide information in stored data in the cloud. Thank you for watching. Learn more with UCertify.